If you wake up in the middle of the night, don't do what they did. Once there was a girl named Bailey who went to a sleepover at a friend's house. But when her parents went to pick her up the next day, something terrifying happened. So Bailey got home pretty late, ate dinner, and went to bed. But in the middle of the night, Bailey woke her parents up. Her dad asked, "What are you up for? It's so late," struggling to put his glasses on. Then Bailey tugged at his shirt sleeve and said, "Guess how old I'm going to be next month?" "I don't know," her dad said, thinking this was some kind of joke. "How old?" Bailey smiled and held up 4 fingers. It's about 7 in the morning now, and Bailey's parents have been awake for almost 8 hours. Still, Bailey refuses to tell her parents where she got them from. Follow for more stories. This is why you should always lock your bathroom door. It was the first night Marnie and her family moved into their new house. Before going to bed, she wanted to take a relaxing bath, but she could have never expected the terrifying things this would lead to. The rest of her family was in the living room watching TV, and a few moments later, Marnie ran out of the bathroom screaming. Turns out when Marnie was sitting in the bathtub, she heard what sounded like heavy breathing. Assuming it must be the wind, she tried to ignore it, but then she noticed something strange about her hair. Her hair was much longer than usual, and it was much darker than her hair used to be too. Marnie jumped out of the bathtub, but as she got up, the back of her head seemed to hit someone else's nose. Since then, she's been too terrified to be in the bathroom alone, convinced that someone else was in the bathtub with her that night. This is why you should always pay attention to details. Once there was a boy named Jonah who was walking through a park to go home after school, but he never expected what he'd see there. He saw a girl sitting alone by a swing in the park, and this made him curious. So he decided to approach her, and from that time on, they talked every night before Jonah went home. Later, he told his friends about this girl, only for his friends to say never go to that park again. They told him years ago at that park, a teacher's daughter passed away in a horrible car accident. When she was found, she was missing a finger. Jonah didn't believe them, so the next time he saw the girl, he asked to see her hands. When she finally showed him, he saw her missing finger. Jonah ran as fast as he could. Even after he went back to the park, he never saw the girl again. This is why you should never talk to strangers in an elevator. One day, a surgeon was working the night shift at a hospital. He just finished his last surgery and was going to the basement. He entered the elevator and saw a woman was already inside. They were casually chatting when the elevator door opened and another woman was about to enter. But the surgeon looked horrified. He quickly slammed the close button and pushed the highest floor in the building. Surprised, the woman in the elevator with him asked why he wouldn't let the other woman in the elevator too. That's when the surgeon explained all patients in this hospital wear white wristbands, but red wristbands were placed on corpses. The surgeon then said, "That was the woman I just operated on and she died on the table. Didn't you see the red wristband she was wearing?" The woman in the elevator with him just smiled, raised her arm and said, "You mean like this one?" If a package arrives at your door, don't do what she did. Once there was a girl named Gabby who received a mysterious package in the mail. There was no name and address written on it, so she had no idea where it came from. She opened it anyways, and inside was a DVD with no title or cover on the case. Thinking it might be one of her friends pranking her, she called them over to her house. Her friends arrived and none of them knew what the mysterious package was, so they decided to watch the DVD together. Immediately, they were surprised at what they saw on the TV screen. There was a clown standing in a normal looking bedroom. The clown was holding 2 red balloons and stared deeply into the camera. Then slowly his expression turned into a menacing grin. Gabby's friends thought it was funny and began laughing, but Gabby just sat there with a terrified look in her eyes. Eventually her friends asked, "What's wrong? Isn't this hilarious?" Gabby replied with her voice shaking, "That's my bedroom."
This is why you should be careful when travelling on the underground. Lisa took the underground to school every day. One morning, she was running late, so she rushed down to her station. When she got to her station, she ran down the stairs, turned the corner, when someone bumped into her and the contents of a bag spilled onto the floor. The man apologised and helped to pick everything up. Then she made her way onto the tube. She arrived at school and started to feel uneasy. Something just wasn't right. She felt as if she was being watched. When she got to her math class, she reached for her calculator, when she could feel that something was stuck to the back of it. And that's when she realised the man from the tube had put a tracker on her.
If you can solve this mystery first try, you may just be a genius. All the clues are hidden in what I'm about to say. Paul is a 20-year-old man and he lives in a detached house. He's extremely close with his entire family. 3 doctors are claiming that Paul is their brother. However, Paul insists that he does not have any brothers. Nobody here is lying. So how is this possible? If you can solve this mystery, comment your answer down below and then send it to a friend.
This is why you should never sleep with your leg hanging out of the bed. It was the summer of 2009 and Amelia had just finished her homework, brushed her teeth and was getting into bed. It was a really warm night, so she was struggling to get comfortable. She ended up falling asleep with her leg out of the covers and hanging over the edge of the bed. She woke up a few hours later to the feeling of something tickling her toes. She looked around her room but couldn't see anything, so she thought it must have been a dream and went back to sleep. She then woke up again to the feeling of someone or something grabbing her leg and pulling her off the bed onto the floor. She screamed, her parents ran in, as they saw something run across her room and jump out of the window. They all rushed straight to the window, but it was nowhere to be seen. It's safe to say that after that night, Amelia never slept with her leg out of bed again. Let's see if you can solve this riddle on your first attempt. Jamie is a 42-year-old mother with 4 daughters. Each one of her daughters has a brother. They don't have any stepbrothers or stepsisters. So how many children does Jamie have in total? Comment your answer down below and then send this video to a friend to see if they can solve it too. This is why you should always close your curtains and lock your windows before you go to bed. Jess and her boyfriend were staying in a cabin in the woods for 2 nights. By the time they arrived, it was getting late, so they decided to settle in and unpack their bags in the morning. Jess decided to take a good look around the cabin. One thing that caught her eye was a creepy looking clown picture. It made her feel really uncomfortable, but she tried to ignore it and went to sleep. She woke up in the middle of the night to her boyfriend snoring. She nudged him to wake him up, but the snoring continued, and that is when she realised the picture she'd seen earlier was actually a window which was now wide open. She slowly leant down to look under the bed where she saw the clown fast asleep holding a knife.
Story time. I babysat a lot of kids in my neighborhood, and there was this one night that I was babysitting a 2-year-old. It was around 10 o'clock at night, so the kid was sleeping, and I was just sitting in the living room. In the living room, there was a big TV, a couch, and then behind me, it was a wall with a giant window. So it was really late at night, I had nothing to do, so I was Snapchatting my friends. If you Snapchat anybody, I'm sure you know that sometimes you Snapchat really fast. You don't even know or look at what you're sending. I was mass snapping all my friends, and then one of them replied 10 minutes later. And he said, "Who's that guy behind you?" And I turned around and no one was there, so I'm like, he's playing a joke on me. But then I get another Snapchat from this friend I had, and she lives all the way across the country. They don't know each other. And she said, "I think there's someone outside." So I was really freaked out because I was alone, there was a giant window behind me, apparently there was someone outside. I wasn't gonna call the child's parents because I didn't want to freak them out, but I was scared. So then I went around the house, locked all of the doors. Sorry, it's a really long story, like for part 2. Part 2. So yeah, there was a guy outside the window. So yes, I did lock all the doors and everything. I made sure everything was secure. I closed the blinds. So for the rest of the night, nothing else really happened other than this really weird thump. It was like someone was knocking on a window. Allow me to demonstrate. I ignored it because I was in denial that this was happening. The rest of the night was normal. The parents came home. I drove really fast home. And then the next morning I wake up. And apparently, an old man with Alzheimer's had escaped from his little home. I did not know this because it was dark outside, and even if I did see him outside the window, I wouldn't have known this. But he was naked. Naked. So it wasn't like a mass murderer outside the window, but it was a naked man with Alzheimer's looking at me through a window.
This is why you should never take walks alone at night. In 2007, a girl was on a late night walk when she looked at the end of the road and saw the silhouette of a man moving around very strangely. It was like he was doing the waltz, but he was moving towards her, so she was sketched out, crossed the road, and went the other way. After a couple minutes, she turned around to see what he was doing, and he was right across the street from her, now staring up into the sky with a huge grin on his face. Now totally creeped out, she turns around and walks about a half block before checking again, and to her horror, he's now crouched down right behind her. But luckily, he stands up, turns around, and kind of hobbles away, and then she notices something. The man had turned around and was now sprinting directly towards her. She runs to safety and now just hopes she never has to see that smiling man again. This is why you should always check under your bed for monsters. In 2012, a young woman who was on the phone with her boyfriend walks downstairs to the lobby of her apartment building, collects her mail, and then heads back up to her room. She sits on her bed to start sifting through the mail when she drops her phone and it falls under the bed. She lies down on the ground to try to reach her arm out to grab her phone when she notices something horrible underneath her bed. A man is lying underneath her bed with his back to her. He's in the fetal position. She manages not to scream. She grabs her phone and says to her boyfriend, "Hey, I gotta go shower, I'll call you back." And she quickly runs into the bathroom, locks the door, turns on the shower, and then jumps out her first floor window. Once she's safely across the street, she calls the police, who quickly arrive, and they go inside and they come out with a deranged, skinny-looking man. Before they take him away, one of the officers walks over to her with a very grim look on his face. He looks at her and he just says, "We found him standing outside of your bathroom holding a knife. He was waiting for you." This is why you should always watch videos to the end. In 2003, a woman came home to her apartment to see that her door was unlocked. She went inside, nothing was missing, so she assumed she must have left it open. When it happened a few more times, but still nothing was missing in her apartment, she went out and got a camera, set it up in her apartment aimed at the front door. The next day, her door was unlocked, so she reviewed the footage. She watches in horror as late in the night, her front door opens and in walks this tall, creepy man who looks around and then walks towards her bedroom off camera. She immediately sprints out of her apartment and calls the police, who show up and tell her to go back in her apartment and just try to stay calm, and that they would put an officer right outside her door so she's safe. As she's sitting on the bed, totally traumatized, she realizes something. She only saw him enter her apartment on that video. She doesn't know if he actually left. As she's sitting there, she feels breathing on her ankles. She runs out, the cop comes in, and he finds the tall, creepy man under the bed holding a knife and a camera.
I made my teacher cry. Story time. When I was in 2nd grade, I had this teacher and she was the devil, and we're gonna name her Miss Jackson. And the reason I call her a devil is because she would say really mean things to me to my face. She would be like, Tye, stop talking like that, you sound like a little girl. Or, your favorite color can't be pink, you have to choose one of the boy colors. And since I was so young, I didn't understand how serious these things were, and I didn't know I can get her in trouble. And I would go home sad like every single day. Eventually my mom noticed and she asked me what was wrong. So I told her some of the things that Miss Jackson would say to me, and my mom was mad. And my mom was like, the next time she says something to you, say something rude back, and if you get in trouble, I'll handle her from there. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. Now, Miss Jackson was a heavy lady, so I knew if I said something rude to her, it would be about her weight. Though we don't body shame around here. We don't do that, okay? So I'm in school eating lunch with my friends who happen to be girls. And Miss Jackson comes up to me and she's like, shouldn't you be eating with the boys? So I looked at her and I was like, shouldn't you be eating a salad? And the lunchroom started laughing and then she started crying.
One day, my cousin made a Tinder, and we were having a family barbecue, so he came over. He was like, oh my god, Sam, like this really hot girl just like matched with me. And then he shows me. And then I see the profile and it's literally pictures of Madison beer. But the name on the profile was like Kalani. I was like, bro, I don't know who you think you're fucking texting, but it's not Madison beer. You're texting someone's fucking auntie right now. Whole ass auntie. He's like, guess we're about to find out. I was like, no, what the no? He's like, yeah, I just gave her the Addy. She's about to pull up. Like, we're gonna meet. Like, it's all cool, Sam. Like, trust me. Trust me. Trust me, he said. Okay. I trusted him. So I see a car pull up, and he's like, oh my god, I think it's her. I was like, oh shit, what if I do meet Madison Beer? The door freaking opens, and this old lady pops up. I look at my cousin, and I'm like, go hug her. Go. You were so excited. It's Kalani, the one and only. Come on.
I have a movie idea. I know it's been a little bit, but I'm back. So hear me out. A young woman has spent basically her entire life in the mental hospital. But while she's in the hospital, she gets pregnant and has a baby boy. Soon after his birth, she begins to act normal and stable, so she gets released to raise him. But by the boy's 18th birthday, his mother is very ill. So he went to go visit her, maybe for the last time. But before he left, her last words to him were, I'm not as crazy as everyone says I am. Trace my steps and come and find me. What? The next day, she died. He wasn't there for the death, and she wanted a closed casket funeral. But her words kept playing in his mind. Come and find me. So he kind of sort of did something really illegal. He dug up her grave. Inside, he found nothing but her mental hospital bracelet from years ago. So he does what she says. He checks himself into the mental hospital and begins to trace her steps. Is his mother alive? Is this some sort of sick game she's playing? Are there more clues within the hospital walls? Or did the pain of her death cause him to lose it?
This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face.